today's Tuesday tip. Last month, I attended a training, a development and economic training in Jackson, Mississippi. At that training, I had the honor of meeting the Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Enforcement Program at HUD Fair Housing. And he told us that there are two phases of fair housing that HUD's going to target during 2018. That's going to be sexual harassment and Section 3 business. Well, today we're going to talk a little bit about sexual harassment. What I want you to know and what I want you to keep in mind is that HUD has coupled or teamed up with DOJ to do sexual harassment protocol, education, and they have formed a task force. So because of that, today I have with me Navigate's HR Director, Dale Marcus. We'd like for you to tell us a little bit about sexual harassment, perhaps the definition, the different types, and even quid pro quo. Because quid pro quo is what the housing industry has to deal with most.
Thank you for having me, Vicki. I'm so glad to be here. As you know, not only is Secretary Carson talking about this, but the whole world now seems to be talking about sexual harassment. And there's a lot to be said, but I do want to say one thing. I'm going to give a disclaimer right off the bat. I am not an attorney, but I do want to talk a little bit about sexual harassment and let you guys know what it is and to make you aware so that you won't do it. That's what I'm not trying to teach you how to do it. Remember, I'm trying to teach you how not to do it and just give you a few facts about it. Sexual harassment is actually a form of sex discrimination that violates Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So that shows you how long it has been around. There are things that you need to understand, and it's very complex in certain ways, but very, very simple in other ways. The act of sexual harassment does not have to be man against female or female against man. It can also be same sex, which I don't think a whole lot of people ever think about. It can also be a supervisor, a manager, a co-worker, a vendor,
a manager, a maintenance person.
Anybody on property or even a non-employee. If you come in contact with folks like that, we don't want any of our employees to ever feel that they are being harassed. So keep that in mind as well. It does, and this is really an interesting thing, it does not have to be the person that is being harassed to be the one that is offended by it. If Miss Vickie says something to me, and I'm okay with it, but someone else overhears it, then that can be a form of harassment as well. So that's a point I don't think a whole lot of people realize, but that is true. And also, the main point is sexual harassment has to be unwelcome for it to qualify as harassment. Now, there are two types of sexual harassment that we talk about, Vicki. You mentioned one, which is quid pro quo. And that actually means something for something. In other words, I promise you a reward if you do something, or I promise you a penalty if you don't do something. So it applies even if the threat is not carried out. In other words, if I say to you, Miss Vickie, if you give me sexual favors, I will give you a promotion. Or, Miss Vickie, if you don't give me sexual favors, I will not give you a promotion. So quid pro quo. That is the main one that most of us think about. However, the other topic is hostile work environment. And that takes place with verbal, nonverbal, physical, it all comes together. And those things are comments, actions by someone. Either they can be a sexual nature or it can be religious. That provides a hostile work environment. Tell that person that it offends you, and please ask them to stop. However, if that doesn't work, then you need to go up the chain and talk to someone else. Okay. So those are the main types.
So let me get this straight, Dale. You could make the wrong type of joke. Yes. You could be making a joke and it'd be funny to you, but someone else overhears it and it offends them.
Correct.
That could be a form or a type of sexual harassment.
Yes, that would fall more reasonably under hostile work environment.
And then let me understand another thing, what you're telling us, is that it needs to be reported. If something is reported to you, then you also need to report it to your supervisor or whomever, because you're responsible for the action and especially reporting it.
Correct, and that's the thing that most of us need to understand, and those of you on property and that are watching this and hearing this, you need a line of defense. You need to be able to have someone and have a structure that is set up. Not only does that structure need to be set up, you need to have a form to where folks can tell you if they feel that they have been harassed or that they're suffering through, if you will, a hostile work environment. Now, another thing you need to keep in mind if someone does come to you is that legally you are required to investigate. Now, that investigation should be held in as strict confidence as you possibly can. However, you will need to interview the person, that, of course, that is making the accusation, if you will, for lack of a better word. You'll interview the person that they're actually referring to and any witnesses that might be involved. You also want to make sure that under no circumstances do you show any type of retaliation towards that person that has made the complaint. And that is of utmost importance, because retaliation claims now, and this is, I'm not going to get on another subject, but retaliation claims now with the EEOC are the #1 types of claims that they are hearing on an annual basis.
And we've talked about retaliation in terms of fair housing also.
Correct.
So we've covered retaliation, which is very, very important. So you have to watch how you address whatever the situation is and how your actions behind the situation go, because retaliation is a fair housing violation also. Well, Dale, I think you've enlightened us on a lot of things.
So.
What I want you all to remember, though, is that you as managers will be responsible for whatever happens under your roof. And when I say you will be responsible, usually, and we've talked about this before, if there's a suit to be placed, then not only can you be liable with the company, but you can be liable as an individual. And we do want you to be on guard and be aware of that. I'd like to thank Dale for joining us today, and we'd like to thank you for viewing. We look forward to seeing you next week at our next Tuesday Tip.